Rick Grenell is joining us now. He's our Senior Advisor for Foreign Policy and National Security. And Rick, I wanted to kind of put this up because you tweeted out this morning that the Biden administration has now given out your emails when you were ambassador to Germany and many when you were the director of national intelligence to various left-wing nonprofits who file FOIAs like we file, and they never gave you a heads up. You find out through press stories. They gave out your State Department emails within a year of you leaving. And as you write in a second tweet, groups like the ACLJ, we have to fight in court for sometimes years to get this kind of information, and hardly ever from the intelligence community.
Yeah, it's really a sad situation because there's just two different standards. There's two sets of rules, and I think everybody knows that. There's one set of rules if you are a conservative, and there's another set of rules if you aren't a conservative. And what is a tragedy to me is within a year, think about that. And I know you guys are experts on all these FOIA requests, but within a year, my emails as the ambassador to Germany, so they were the State Department emails, were given in 3 batches to left-wing media organizations and NGOs. And of course, they perused every one of them. They didn't come up with anything. We all would have heard it for sure if there was anything in those. But the larger point of the double standard is what's really troubling to me, because we here at ACLJ are constantly trying to uncover information that the government is trying to cover up so that we can share with the American public and be transparent. The emails that they went after for me were just anything and everything to do with my job.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference. We don't do it to be mean or nasty. We do it specifically. In fact, to actually get a FOIA successfully through, as you said, I mean, we do this a lot. You have to be extremely specific. Usually, the first time you're very specific, and they want you to get even more specific. You can't just say generally, "Hey, I want all the emails from this person at Homeland Security." No, that would never fly. That would get thrown out immediately. And even when you get very specific, you got to take that and get even more specific to terms, words, dates, time frames, to who, from who. I mean, that's the normal process, as it should be, to get this information. But we're seeing the double standard play out because, Rick, I wanted to tie it to this. Last night, we see the breaking news. There's Michael Isikoff again, who leaked the story about Carter Page, and then the FBI used it to get a FISA on Carter Page, which was totally bogus. Now he's leaking out from the district attorney's office.
Yeah, look, there's a long history of Michael Isikoff having ties to the Democratic Party and all of the people that just moved from Washington to New York and Justice Department to the State Department to DOD. It's the same crowd. It's always anonymous. It's always half-truth. And somebody like Michael Isikoff doesn't even care if it's truthful. He just wants to be able to say, I've got this scoop of what someone is saying. So it's really gossip. It's the type of information that is unverified, not detailed in its facts. It's always general information. And the double standard, I think, is shocking. We should absolutely do investigations of who is doing these leaks. It's against the law to be leaking, and someone should be indicted for it.
Yeah, I mean, this idea, again, I think too, Rick, the politics of this is just very interesting to people because I think, one, I know people are seeing President Trump poll numbers go up, fundraising went up big this afternoon, but this is still a sad day for our country because even if this politically benefits President Trump, and I think it is right now, and I think the Democrats have really overcalculated this move here, this is still a very sad day for the country because the legal system, for the first time ever, is being used to go after a former president. Never happened in history. And you can just see how this unravels into chaos across the country with 2,300 DAs, some who are Republican who are going to say, you know what, we're going to start going after the Democrats. And then our whole system of the rule of law starts falling apart.
Look, I know that there are dictators around the world. There are leaders in other countries who would be very jealous of what's happening in Washington, D.C. When the ruling party is able to use its power to arrest the opposition figure, the leading opposition figure, the clear one who is going to be running against them in the next election, to arrest him and try to get him not to run, which is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He doesn't want Donald Trump even running. So the entirety of the Biden followers, the Democrats, are going to follow what Joe Biden is saying. He is in control. He's put out the directive that we should stop Donald Trump from even running. And dictators around the world are envious that he's able to get away with it by having a chorus of media in Washington, D.C. not criticize him for it. I mean, the most you're seeing from the media is saying, oh, I found a poll where Americans may not like it. That's not criticism. That's factual polls. What the media needs to be able to do is understand this slippery slope. When the ruling party arrests the opposition leader, this is where the State Department usually jumps in and condemns this behavior, but it's happening in our country.
Yeah, but this is unacceptable, Logan. As Rick said, we point this out in other countries. We say going after your political opponents through saying you're using the rule of law. That's what we say Putin does.
Yeah, and that's how no one ever decides to run for president again. Because a situation where as soon as you are no longer in power, your political opponents will do what they can to try to imprison you. And that is what happens in a lot of these countries worldwide. And we see that. We've seen it play out dozens of times. It goes, well, at least that's not America. That's not what happens here. But it is what happens in these countries time after time after time. As soon as another dictatorial regime comes in, guess what happens to the previous one? He's usually put in jail, killed in the streets, wild stuff happens. We don't do that here. We've actually been the beacon of not doing that here. We talked about how even growing up, when they talked about Nixon, they're like, well, he pardoned Nixon because it was for the betterment of the country. Right. That's the way we were educated. That, yeah, Nixon did bad things. However, we decided as a country to be able to move on. But to move on as a country, we were not going to put the country through that while there were still so many supporters.
Why our founding fathers had it's impeachments in the Constitution. If you want to remove a president and try, which the Democrats tried twice to remove, once after he was president, President Trump, which is absurd. But there's a political process to do it. So you don't have to resort to the legal system. There's a political process set up by our founding fathers in a genius way. It's very difficult, a very high bar, but it's there. And so, Rick, the idea that even the fact that the Department of Justice said we're not getting involved in this, the FEC said we're not getting involved in this, to me, it is just, listen, if it was anybody other than Donald Trump, this would be overwhelming. This would be financially, to have this many attorneys in this many different states while you're still trying to campaign for office. Like Logan said, if you're anyone else, you're looking at this saying, oh, I don't want to get involved in politics.
Well, it's not only that, but I think the analogy of dictators and others around the world not getting pushback from the media, I think, is one of the key elements here, because what we have in the United States that is unique and different is a press that is unafraid to challenge government officials when they overreach. But what we see over the last several years is an entirety of the newsrooms in Washington, D.C., that they are afraid. They're either afraid to stand up to Joe Biden, and maybe it's because their social life suffers in Washington, D.C. They don't get the dinner party invites. Their kids at school don't have the right friends because they're ostracized by that, political community. They're either afraid or they totally believe in what's happening and they're cheerleaders. Either way, they shouldn't be journalists. You have to be brave to be a journalist. You have to be able to call out both sides and be unbiased to be a journalist. And I think that the reason why Joe Biden is getting more brazen and going after his political opponents is because he's unchecked. There isn't anyone standing up to him in the media saying this is terrible. But I do believe, to give our listeners a little bit of hope, I do believe outside of Washington, D.C. and New York, that regular people, independents, see this and are outraged.
I think that is exactly what we are seeing.